record. All right, everybody. Talpiot Talk number 2 with Brendan O'Connell, Jeremy Roth-Cushell, and Greg McCarran, and I'm Joseph Davis. We want to dive in real quick. Brendan, you sent us an email about this bill 2497, United States Israel Security Assistance Authorization Act of 2018. Let's go.
Oh boy, make sure you put that link in under the thingy.
Definitely.
Yeah, Diane sent me that. Diane, you know, it's like everyone, you get sent really good stuff. I could say, yeah, I was rummaging through deep into the archives of the Congress, but no, Diane sent it to me over Skype, and that bill, I mean, laid out for everybody, is not just the Talpiot program, which has been running since probably its birthings were not 50s, and NASA. They were actually saying, we're going to cooperate with Israel with regards to NASA and space exploration in the 1950s, correct me if I'm wrong, in this bill. And basically it's the US is Israel. There is, in my opinion, and that's why I defer to you guys, when I skim read that bill, in that bill, which is dating back all the way to the late 50s, I believe, you see that there is no dime's worth of difference between Israel and the United States. They are literally linked. Is that correct? Is that my reading?
Yeah, authorized in 1958. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, and this newest update of it, I pulled it up, and it really suggests that. And it goes through the history of all the different findings. In 98, the United States designated Israel as a, quote, major non-NATO ally, unquote. And then talks about the 10-year memorandum of understanding about the military assistance. And then 2012, that the United States Israel Enhanced Security Cooperation Act of 2012 declared it to be the policy of the United States to, quote, help the government of Israel preserve its qualitative military edge. Isn't that what it's actually called?
Israel's edge.
Yeah.
Talpiot doesn't exist.
Wow.
There is no Russian collusion. Talpiot doesn't exist.
And
there's no Russian collusion.
Jeremy, explain that. That's from the book that you're reading, right, about Talpiot?
Yeah. Yeah, it's called Israel's Edge, the story of IDF's most elite unit, Talpiot, by Jason Gewirtz. It's a very strange name. I can't say it. Gewirtz, by Geffen Publishing House. And it's the sort of first public history of Talpiot, where he names some of the people and everything like that. So I'm going to go back to this. It says to preserve Israel's qualitative military edge amid rapid and uncertain regional political transformation. And isn't that also probably referring to the clean break doctrine and Oded Yinon? I mean, who's creating the regional political transformation? And then it says, and quote, provide Israel defense articles and services to include air refueling tankers, missile defense capabilities, and specialized munitions. And then it goes on through 2014, and Obama signing a policy to, quote, continue to provide Israel with robust security assistance, including for the procurement of the Iron Dome. Then 2016, it talks about Arrow 3 upper tier interceptor programs. And then 2016, it says expressing support for the expeditious consideration and finalization of a new robust and long-term memorandum of understanding. And then here's where it really lays it out, I think, is that in Senate Resolution 508 provides that the Senate, quote, reaffirms that Israel is a major strategic partner of the United States, and then B, reaffirms that it is the policy and law of the United States to ensure that Israel maintains its qualitative military edge and has the capacity and capability to defend itself from all credible military threats. And then it talks about tiered missile defense programs. And so there's yeah, I think this sort of lays out that this has been ensconced in American law to enforce, to make sure that Israel has all technology that it needs to maintain its
literally law
edge. Yeah,
it's literally law. It's the law. You will give Israel all that $1 trillion in research and Pentagon development. You will hand it over, or else it's like, what the?
Yeah, I want to mention too that it just made me think. I emailed it to y'all when I was reading this. Something Nick mentioned in one of his prior interviews that I was just going through but the Israel Free Trade Agreement, it was the United States-Israel Free Trade Agreement was the first free trade agreement entered into by the United States. I think it was 1985, and it continues to serve as the foundation for expanding trade. So I don't know if that plays into it, but I thought that that's pretty interesting too, with NAFTA, and then what was the other one that got shot down? But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
TPP.
But
I like that word, free trade.
Yeah.
It's definitely free. It's one way free.
Exactly.
I wonder if the good MAGA folks are going to say anything about the U.S.-Israel Free Trade Agreement.
No.
I mean,
I want to write a psychology book on this, man, because it's bizarro world. I get frustrated, and and I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm trying to be quiet, but the psychology fascinates me. When I picked up on this, someone like, I hate Brandon Martinez. I can't stand him, but he was right. Him and his little white supremacist buddy. Well, I don't know. Is he brown Latino supremacist? I don't know what he is. Catholic, anyway.
Yeah, I think
he was at me all the time on Spanish about Iran and stuff, and I said, yeah, Brandon, but nothing's perfect, just chill out. But he was it's frustrating. No matter how much proof, when I finally clicked after Iran, I went, okay, it's clearly true. There is something really wrong with this whole Middle East setup. And just with a few Google searches, you've managed, just a Google search, people have said to me, amazing research, Brendan. I didn't want to tell them I was drunk on cheap Malay scotch and corn chips. I was literally brushing corn chip crumbs with my scotch in my hand, tapping with my left finger, Israel, China, Russia contracts. There they are. And people are saying, wow, amazing research. I'm sorry, I'm not even trying to be funny. It's ridiculous. Please, someone, how do we correct this?
I mean, it is. But what I see it as is it's a logical conclusion to come to, because I think, Jeremy, we starting to look at trying to figure out what's going on with the foreign policy, and then we stumbled upon these articles with these internal kind of debate/arguments going on between American neocons and Israel over foreign policy and these disagreements, and I think that's what led us to this. But I think the first step was starting to acknowledge that it seems that Russia and Israel were a lot closer than it seemed in areas related to certain aspects of foreign policy, that there were differences with the American neocons, which are supposed to be the biggest champions of Israel, like the Bill Kristol crowd. And then from there, it was kind of a logical conclusion to see that it became logical to see that there was, if they're closer and we're not being told the truth in this area, what else are we being deceived on? So, I mean, first of all, it takes acknowledging that all is not as it seems to be with Russia and Israel in particular, and Putin's relationship with Jewish Zionist power. But that's the hard part, is getting people to see that, because there's so much misinfo and disinfo throughout the alternative media, and so many people who follow alternative media who think they're getting the truth have just been led to believe that, Putin's this great enemy of Zionism, and that even though there's no evidence to point to Putin being an enemy of Israel in any way, shape, or form, people just automatically assume that because of the narrative they've been fed.
Greg, but all Putin has to do is go, I assure our partners we won't stab them in the back, and then he goes, yeah, maybe it was some Jews who did something, and everyone goes, he said Jews.
He called them out.
He called them out.
It's the same thing with Trump to a lesser extent, though, too. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
We should all get a Jewish dog whistle, and then we could excuse everything that we did.
Yeah.
But this has all made me begin to look back then at the actual intelligence relationship between the U.S. and Israel, and then how it actually then has, for long term, that this Talpiot program, even before it was created in a way, that Israel was already creating the intelligence conduit to begin to move not only U.S. intelligence secrets, but actual probably technological secrets into the Soviet Union when it was still the Soviet Union. And this new book that came out about James Jesus Angleton, The Ghost, I think, by James Morley. And it was sort of lucked out that it came out at this time, because I remember Michael Collins Piper in an interview talking about how he had noticed that there was this guy, some guy that Angleton, who was both the head of the Israel desk at the CIA, but he was also the head of counterintelligence operations, and people such as Michael Collins Piper have put him at the center of the Kennedy assassination in terms of the link between the CIA and Israel. But Piper had said that there was this guy that Angleton would visit most of the days of the week and hang out there large portions of the evening, drink Johnny Walker Black Label, entire bottles, and discuss things. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like some type of either a handler relationship or, you know, there's something deep going on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to track this down by all of the just handful of writers who've written on Angleton. And then this Morley book comes out, and it turns out that it's very likely that the data lines up, that this guy who Angleton was very close to, and it lines up with, they were meeting 5 days a week, is one Ephraim Halevi, who at that point was basically the Israeli intelligence man on the ground in D.C. to convene with CIA, but he ends up being the head of Mossad on September 11th, 2001. So this suggests a very, very deep relationship. And
that's amazing. That's amazing information. That blew me away when I read that, when you sent that to me.
And I'll share the links too below. Yeah, Jeremy.
So I'm just starting to get sort of trying to dig back into this sort of intelligence side of this technology thing that you're describing, and to sort of look back and see how deep it goes, because of course the intelligence world is how these high-level people in all these different governments actually talk to each other and make trade-offs. And of course, it's a hall of mirrors. And then that hooks up into things like Kim Philby, the most infamous Soviet mole in the entire Western world, highest levels of MI6, Angleton's closest buddy, and supposedly Mossad was informing Angleton along the way that Philby was a Soviet agent. But it also looks like Philby was an Israeli agent. He married a Zionist woman, I think, early on, and the Teddy Kolek, I think his name, who was an Israeli intelligence officer who became the head of he was the Jerusalem mayor, was at the wedding of Kim Philby and basically held on to Philby's Soviet mole secret for many years. So there is this intelligence background that might suggest that there has been a long-term relationship, and that Israel has served as a leverage and basically a fulcrum point in feeding U.S. secrets, and then increasingly into the 21st century and the Talpiot program, technological secrets into the heart of the Russian security services.
Could I just quickly add, for anyone that doesn't know, if you want a good Hollywood production on James Jesus Angleton, it's The Good Shepherd, produced by Robert De Niro, Matt Damon. Yeah. It's a good movie. It's a long movie, but you'll really enjoy it. It's The Good Shepherd, and I think that's gold. What you just said, Jeremy. Wow, it's so deep. I mean, the documentary would have to be 6 hours long.
Maybe we can get Ryan Dawson will make it.
Oh yeah, isn't he doing that, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln or something?
No, he's doing JFK, so it's relevant. Maybe we could stick it on him. Yeah.
There you go.
No, it's Tom Hayden would always tell me when I would confront him about 9/11 and how it was associated with the same networks of JFK and RFK and all that. He's like, well, I'm still trying to figure out the Lincoln assassination. And Tom Hayden also told me that I had a disturbing personality. It's true.
God's sake. Yeah, you're just so disturbing. I feel disturbed. I'm offended.
I'm poking you right now.
Hey, Brendan, talk about, kind of a theory you have about, with this agreement, NASA technology, and like it's basically making Talpiot law. But your speculation over, and mine too, really, but via you, moving high tech to Russia, basically, and that Guardian article regarding, after the fall of the Soviet Union, all the migrants from Russia into Israel. You've done a good job explaining this. I just wanted to, because I think that's where we're kind of headed with it.
Well, Listen, I just want to ask posit a question to viewers, all 10 of them, and my 3 compatriots. Jaleel, who's not with us at the moment, to Nick in his spirit. I know he's up there going, go, 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 go. I want to ask this question. I first heard about this stuff from Father Alexis Rosenthal, who was the abbot of Jerusalem for many, many years, when I was going to be in a monastery in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, 2008. And it was all those monks that warned me about Putin, because I was the Putin groupie. And I was, ooh, he's got such swagger. He's a former assassin. He's going to fix all these problems. They said, dude, once KGB, always KGB. All his links, Urian drop off.
You were the brother Nathaniel of your group.
Oh, yeah, I was the brother Nathaniel. Yeah, I mean, that's another story there, brother Nathaniel. But anyway, the worship of Putin and so on. But one of the things that, oh dear God, I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, I've only had one coffee. This happens a lot.
No, we were talking about the abbots and Putin. They were warning you about Putin.
Yeah, it's the whole. I'm sorry, I've gone completely blank. This happens a lot. It's stress. I was worried it was Alzheimer's.
But where I was going, Brendan, with it was basically about, you know, after the fall, what was it, 91, and then you had all these Russian migrants.
Yes, sorry, I've got you
Israel.
Right. I first heard about, and Chomsky writes about it as well. I can't remember in which book, but Chomsky writes about the fact that all the IDF troops, the Russian troops who are supposedly Jewish and committed Zionists and so on, they're manning the checkpoints, and all the Russian Orthodox, all the Orthodox Christian monks, when they walk through the checkpoints, and the priests, all the supposed Israeli Defense Force personnel who are obviously committed Jews and Zionists are asking for blessings from the Christian priests. And I thought this was hilarious. And then when I found the article, it all made it clear. And I put to you, what is the effect, as that Guardian article says, of 1 million plus Russian allegedly Jews? And if you watch the movie Lord of War with, what's his name? Nicolas Cage, where he actually says, we were from the Ukraine, we just pretended to be Jews so we could get the hell out of the Soviet Union. So you have all these people basically pretending, you know, who might have a granddad who maybe was Jewish and walked past the synagogue at some stage in his life. The point is, what is the result of that? And most of them have PhDs in electrical engineering. They were driving taxis at one stage. Now they're running the Intel fabrication, not just fabrication, design and fabrication. I mean, that is where the Intel management system was designed and put into the core series of Intel chips. It is the backdoor of backdoors into the entire cloud computing, artificial intelligence. It's all of that stuff. It's all come out of Israel, and they're all Russians. And I'll tell you, do you know Russian Jews, or people who say they're Jews? Man, they are Russian first. They'll say, oh, I'm not Jewish, I'm Russian Jewish. I mean, these people are pretty diehard for their country. So what's the result of that? What's the result of 1 million PhDs flooding into Israel and working in industry, education, electrical engineering, the military? They've taken it over, literally taken it over. So what is the implication for that? That's a third-party Golitsyn, third-party way to grab high technology and reinvigorate your rusty Soviet Union, which was just rusty missiles covered over with paint. It was a joke. They couldn't even feed themselves. Well, they're trying to correct that. So I say this is Soviet Union 2.0, the head of the beast that appeared dead with a deadly wound, and then was, and everyone followed the beast with war.
There's a bit of irony to that, because it was Jews within the Soviet Union 1.0, I guess you could say, who played a key role in the propaganda war to kind of bring down Soviet Union 1.0 by pointing out all the persecution they faced under the Soviets post Stalin, right? I guess Stalin's last years, because Stalin's been rehabilitated as like some type of hero, right? But and then they are the key players also in the Soviet Union 2.0, so that makes you wonder. And it goes back to that book where it said, you know, the Soviet Union never went away, and that it's just simply reinvented itself. And I think that this, there's an irony to that, though. The people who brought down Soviet Union 1.0 are the same ones who were, in your theory, are keeping it alive via this. Maybe they never killed it in the first place, though. Either you got to think about that also.
Yeah.
Well, I think they had to put in the anti-terrorist stuff. And I mean, Fletcher Prouty wrote about that. And the report from Iron Mountain, that brilliant book which says we'll distract the public with war environmental concerns, and UFOs. With the report
It
from
talks
Iron
about UFOs in Iron Mountain.
in Iron Mountain,
Oh, wow.
1969.
Okay, I got to get that PDF after that.
Oh, it's magic.
Yeah.
It's just read that sucker. I'm reading today. And Fletcher Prouty was brilliant. He said he was in banking and oil, and they said in the early 70s. The 70s is a key period. You had the pushing of Holocaust narrative forward when they weren't doing so well. They realized no one cares, so we better push the Holocaust narrative hardcore. We're going to push Islamic extremism through Saudi Arabia and the madrasas and the Wahhabi Salafis, so we fund that. And you saw all that coming through in the 1970s, including the concrete form of the Talpiot program. It all happened in the mid to late 1970s, which probably included that World Trade Center takedown, which Christopher Berlin said was planned for 1982 or 1992, not 2001.
Yeah, the late 80s, that certain criminal elements of Mossad were about to take control of security at the World Trade Center, I believe, in the late 80s. And yeah, I think you're right, Brendan, in terms of the 70s as this key transition point too, because there's also this part of where there was some trepidation around Israel in the U.S., including in some aspects of the Jewish community, and even I believe the Sulzbergers from the New York Times were sort of like, maybe they weren't quite anti-Zionist, but they were non-Zionists. There was that letter to the New York Times from Hannah Arendt and Albert Einstein, all that type of thing. But then after the assassinations domestically in the 60s, that we found out more and more have an Israeli deep element to it, including the Kennedys, but more and more there's evidence of King and even potentially Malcolm X. Malcolm X really pissed the Zionists off a lot. Zionist dollarism is an article that Greg and I have looked at before. It's just very interesting, from the early 60s. And then so after the assassinations, and including then the move into the Yom Kippur War in the early 70s, there was a shift and the hardening of this relationship between the U.S. and Israel. And of course, Angleton was key to all of that. And he had, and it's not a coincidence that he had multiple awards and honorary places to him in Israel after his death, I believe. And so then the 70s too, yes, the idea, even the nomenclature of the Holocaust didn't exist in relationship to World War II, the sort of specific, Jewish claims to suffering that was before that known as Shoah, then became Holocaust. I believe it was like late 70s that nomenclature was pushed. And then of course the birth of Talpiot is in the wake of 73, and then probably comes into full power in the late 70s, when you also have this Jerusalem conference and the rise of Netanyahu, and where you have the orchestration of the modern war of terror. And at this Jerusalem conference, of course, you have all of these U.S. elements who are brought to the table too, including, like, I believe, H.W. Bush and James Baker and these types of folks. So I think you're right. That's sort of the key element. And then it brings it into the heart of the Cold War in the 80s, when you have the CIA running major covert operations all throughout the Western Hemisphere, and Israel plays a key supporting role in many ways all throughout it. Iran-Contra, it's called Iran-Contra, but it should really be called Iran-Israel-Contra, because Israel was the third party, the middleman broker. Go look at the history of Michael Ledeen.
Are you saying Iran was playing Tutsis with Israel, Jeremy? That can't.
Don't worry, it was just Manuchar Gobanafar, and I'm sure he's got no connections.
Well, no donations for you, my friend. No donations for you.
Fascinating about the 70s, though. I didn't realize so many critical things happened in the 70s. I always looked at the 60s as being the critical era, but 70s would be very interesting to go back and revisit all of those important events. It was the advent of international terrorism really rose, I think, with the Munich Olympics, which happened in that time period, and so there's a lot that happened in the 70s. It's amazing. I didn't realize. Big decade there.
And the rise of the war on drugs, and I think that's also key to all of this too. The war on is a key concept in terms of the rolling out of police states domestically, but in an increasingly global fashion. And so that the war on drugs creates a situation where you can begin to militarize the police forces, but then you also utilize the drugs. The CIA is, of course, brokers mainly in heroin in the 70s, the Golden Triangle, bringing that home to the ghettos of America. But then in the 80s, it's mainly about cocaine. But in the 90s, the Israelis rise with the brokering of what's it called, the techno drug.
Oh, ecstasy. Yeah.
Ecstasy, yes, yeah. And so the Israeli gangs were known to sort of have the corner on the market in ecstasy.
By the Netherlands, and also for some reason the Serbs are heavily involved in that as well. I don't know why.
Could be. There's the base, I believe, is important. Isn't there a major? No, maybe that's not exactly. That's not where that big U.S. military base is.
Could I just put forward a question to you, rhetorically maybe? They give us so much ammunition. You talk about wars on drugs. We've got all these are like documented, fully referenced. There's Chomsky treatises with footnotes. We have the Israeli press putting forward the statements of these crazy rabbis who are the top levels, mainstream society. The Israeli press appear to be saying, please help us, please help us. We want to go to the beach. We just want, please get rid of these crazy people, help us. We've got all this ammunition. And yet, still to this day, it's testimony to the psychological warfare operation, particularly this, we'll call it the alt media and the internet, which has in many ways liberated us to a point. But we never seem to, we've sort of got this GTS 454 supercharged Chevy with hotted up suspension, grippy tires, but this thing's just, and the wheels are, and we just can't get traction. There just appears to be no moving from the swirling internet into a concrete, tangible, dense, political outcomes. And that, I'll tell you what, that is my reason for living. How do we get this thing into tangible political structures that will actually affect the way we live? I'll put it to you.
I think that there's almost like two different levels as far as of enlightenment education, not just when it comes to just waking up to, like, I guess, some realities in our world. It's not to say that the four of us here in this group have all the answers. I mean, we don't, but I think we do look at things, and a lot of things that so many other people, even within the conspiracy culture, whatever you want to call it, are not willing to look at and acknowledge. But I think first of all, there's the era of enlightenment that comes with kind of waking up to mainstream lies, right? And then there's this second era where you get trapped into this a lot of false leads within the alternative media, within conspiracy culture. So I think a lot of people, and I think, Jeremy, we may have faced this when we put out this a segment on our program about the Real News Network and some of the roots of the Real News Network, and linking it back to some of the connections of Paul Jay, the founder, and his co-founder, this rabbi figure who was involved.
Rabbi David Oestreicher,
David Oestreicher, who has worked with organizations connected to the autistic element of the IDF, Unit 9900, and also to anti-communist efforts in Africa in the 70s, which of course go completely against what the Real News Network purports to be all for. And so I think there's a lot of pushback, and this is just an example. You could also go to alt-right type of examples as well, or even Alex Jones. I think that when you start to wake up to these things, I think there's not only a pushback against mainstream lies, but there's also a pushback against going after certain sacred cows within the alternative community, which have gained a lot of trust and a lot of people have learned to trust and put their faith into. So I think that people don't like to see, whether it's mainstream or alternative, their sacred cows, the things that they strongly believe in, they don't like to see those get challenged. So I think there's a lot of pushback. People just don't want to challenge themselves and look beyond this narrative they have in their minds of things like Russia and Putin, and that there really is a force out there with someone as powerful as Putin really is like the driving force that's going to be like the person to push back against all of the wrong in the world and all this evil that's going on, that there really is an alternative, and that therefore you don't really have to think too much about it, honestly, because you believe that there's somebody like you believe that somebody's out there fighting for you, and therefore when you have this belief and you don't want to challenge that, I think it's hard to continue to open your mind to more and more information as it comes along when you get trapped into these alternative paradigms. I think this Putin narrative of like Putin and by extension Trump, because I don't think the Trump thing would have a lot of legs without Putin in the picture. It becomes very difficult to tear down and shatter these and to really tear into that, because once you've woke up to some lies, you don't want to have to continue this process. I mean, there are people who will, but I think sometimes it's very difficult to convince a lot of people, even within who are more knowledgeable, who understand a lot of the problems. I think it's hard for a lot of people to even take that next step. So I think that might be a large part of it.
You know what? I want to throw something in here, Brendan, real quick on that note, because it just got me thinking. It's like, because Brendan, I was, listening to you. You were in some of your videos. You see over this timeline of like, what is Putin, figuring him out. You're just kind of coming to that realization that, there's something there. We know the relationships with Israel. But then you look at, like Greg's saying, the alt media, and you look at like Alex Jones, these alt-right figures that are lauded up in the press, like Richard Spencer, even on record saying that their movement is analogous with the Bolshevik Revolution. And you see even like, I think Alex Jones has interviewed Dugan, and you see these guys like
where's Dugan these days?
I don't know, but I mean, the point I'm trying to make is like Global Research too, out of Canada, 21st Century Wire with Patrick Henningsen, and a lot of these folks, even like Jay Dyer, that have a decent following, all seem to kind of really weak on the Russia thing. So it just seems to me like there's something there, even looking at the left too, with like something like Antifa or Antifa, whatever, and kind of this worship of Lenin, and from that left perspective, and like them wearing the communist iconography on their shirts and stuff, like the commie flag or whatever. You see that on the left, but you see this, now on the mainstream left, though, a lot of those folks are really hysterical about Russia. But again, I'm just pointing out with Antifa and, the communism thing, and then who created communism, where did Bolshevism come from, and all that, and we know that history. So to me, it does seem like there's something there with the, especially with the alt-right, and kind of really weak on Russia, like, that needs to be explored more. And like you were saying earlier, Brendan, it's like if Putin says one thing, it may have been some Ukraine Jews, and everybody's like, oh yeah, like we know, we got it. It just it just makes you think. It just makes you think like, okay, wait a minute, like this is pause for concern. What is the end goal here?
I think it's money. To be honest, I think it's shallow and superficial. Let's call them the major alt players. They want money, and the money is in supporting Iran and Russia. And if you want to go the third, just dabble your feet in Trump. Just dabble. You don't have to say you support him, but you do the dabble with Trump. Maybe it's 666 DGS. We're not entirely sure. And you do that, the money's rolling in. I was making 500, baby, $500 a week. That's good money.
That's a great point.
And the moment I questioned the Iran narrative, the moment I questioned Putin, it went overnight.
Yeah, and also you'll get pushback from both the quote, the extreme right and the quote extreme left on these same matters, because they come together with the Russia thing, and they're both very quick to dismiss any type of Russian, quote unquote, Russian collusion and all this stuff. They're very quick to champion Iran as well, and there's so much overlap there between the right and the left. They're supposed to be these big enemies, the alt-right and the hard left, and they come together almost entirely on these matters, and there's very little difference between what a lot of people on the hard left are saying and what a lot of people on the alt-right are saying when it comes to Russia.
Well, Dr. Steve Pachanik's writing both scripts. I mean, look at the left. They're nuts. They're supposed to be nuts, because you're not supposed to have a choice. I mean, if they really wanted to beat Trump, you would have put in Bernie Free Stuff Sanders. Bernie Free Stuff Sanders would have won that election hands down with his rhetoric alone. He would have won that election hands down. But they put in that moron, criminal, sperm drinking, blood whatever, spirit cooking lunatic. sexually molested as a child by her father, Hillary Clinton. So I mean, of course he was going to win, and they keep saying, "Well, lucky we've got Trump. Do you want Hillary?" But of course, that's the plot.
You want Hitlery?
Yeah, you want Hitlery? So that's the plot. Just give me free stuffed Sanders, man, because it just made me feel good, and I'm happy to feel good. But look, I actually think the control mechanism is not that big a mystery. It's about money. What do they say? Sean Penn in that great movie, The Assassination of President Nixon, where Sean Penn should have at least got an Academy Award nomination, where he plays Samuel Bix, the Jewish guy who's the man on the street. Have you watched it? The Assassination of President Nixon. It's based on a true story. The guy that tried to hijack the plane to fly it into the White House.
Oh.
Watch it. It's brilliant. Where he's going, it's all about the money. It's all about the money, screaming at the television. But on a certain level, it is that crass. You control people with cash. If you saw the people that would come to me, don't screaming at me over Skype, don't go against Putin, do this, do that.
Oh
and I said, have you got a dog in this fight? Have you got a dog in this fight, man? Trying to handle me. People who go to the Philippines with their, they're 57, showing me photos of their 18-year-old girlfriends. They never went below 18. I was waiting for it to slowly lower down to 12, but they never went below 18. But I have a book. I have a book on the people who contact me. The point I'm trying to make is, I think on one level it's just money, and people love sticking with what's easy, and money is a lot of it. Because look at, could I just for 5 minutes? There's been a lot of talk about me being my own worst enemy, and currently, just for fun, I'm on Facebook just deleting people, just for fun. Don't you dare mention Hitler. If you dare open your mouth on flat Earth, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. And I'm just unfriending, and it's like, oh, how dare you? Oh, unfriended, goodbye. And people are in shock. How dare you unfriend me? The point I'm trying to make is, they say I'm my own worst enemy. I'll give you just 3 quick ones. Ryan Dawson, why did you turn on me? Ryan Dawson told me that he was the author of a 2005 pivotal webpage, which was pushing the Fox News stories, Variant, P-Tech, MITRE, you name it. It was brilliant. It was amateurly done. And he said, that was mine. And he said, yes, the Talpiot program, very important. I'm onto it all. Oh, wow. I said, respect. People said, I can't work with Dawson. He's an idiot. I said, look, yes, he's got a very difficult personality, but look, give him some respect. He's done some good work. 3 months later, he's done nothing. The Talpiot program doesn't exist, and it's the same old crap because he wants to get on Press TV in Russia today. So I called him and said, I think you're a damn fraud. You never did that webpage. You never done any of this. You don't even know. And next minute he's saying, oh, well, I don't really understand Talpiot. I've been busy. I'm having a child. I'm researching the assassination of Caesar, or whatever he's doing. Now, we laugh, but what crap is that? And the guy he's still got an audience. And then you got Max Egan. Now, I like old Max. I don't believe he's evil or in being, but he's hungry for money. He's the wrong side of 55. He's got no cash. He was trapped in the Brazilian jungle with his friend Zen Gardner, the PR man for the Children of God pedophile ring, who he refuses to denounce. Now, who is paying the bills, Max? Max contacts me because I was desperate. I was desperate. And he says, we're here to help. And I'm going to put you on to Luke Rudkowski. He's got a huge audience. And I went, Luke Rudkowski, only anti-Semites say Israel did 9/11? Huh? What the hell? And then he's putting me on to Richie Allen. I'm sorry, I don't do eek. I will not. I would starve before I do a David Icke associated Richie Allen. And I refused. And the only question I got from, and I'll finish in 2 minutes, this needs to be said, from Luke Rudkowski was a short sentence basically around, have you discussed this with anyone else? Now I ask you, if you want to interview someone, do you start it with, have you discussed this with anything else? What is he, a CIA handler?
Yeah.
I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. Then, of course, Max takes it and says, brilliant, Brendan. Yes, Talpiot, Israel. Oh, Israel, free Palestine, free the world. Next minute, Max has taken up 5G, AI, and robots. Suddenly, all of a sudden, he's read a few internet articles. He's running around. Now he's the wise old, doing his Moses on Mount Sinai with his tablets of the dangers of 5G, 4G, 5G, whatever. And next minute, it's all terrible. We're all going to die, and no mention of Israel. I mean, what could go wrong? The Talmudic supremacist state is controlling and designing all this equipment and wants to cull us all. What could go wrong? I think that's a pretty significant thing you might want to mention. And when I said, hey, Max, great interview, where's Israel? He said, oh, I'm busy, I'll get back to you, for 2 days. And then I said, F you. What the hell's going on? And I've still got his hissy fit on Skype, all screen recorded, his hissy fit, where he says, well, it doesn't matter. Israel's irrelevant. It's going to take them over too. So what happened between that interview where Israel is the key Talpiot's the key. You're a genius, Brendan. We're going to help you all we can by sending you to all the wrong people. And Ken O'Keefe, who I've got a beef with as well, I will tell you very briefly, 2 more minutes, says, where's the money coming from, Max? Now, Max was starving in the Brazilian jungle at one stage. Starving in the Brazilian jungle. I'm down to 1 feed a day. Next minute, he's doing tours, flying in LA, and no mention of Israel. So I think Max did defend me, and when I was in jail, and Max, I'll do the same for you. You're not evil. You're not working for the Illuminati. You're just worried about your money. I understand. You're the wrong side of 55. But one final one, Ken O'Keefe, come on, man. He's a con artist hanging out with his, the woman half his age, and good luck to him, the Filipino hoe, and I'm sorry to be so crass, the woman is there rubbing her nipples with her black lipstick and her dark occultish art. I mean, it's outrageous. They're off their heads on something. He can sue me. You're off your head on ecstasy in that video, Ken. It's outrageous to think you thought, oh yeah, pop that up. That'll do my reputation well, sweetheart. So what I'm trying to say is I could rip apart all these received geniuses who will do anything. They will sell their grandmothers for a spot on Russia Today and Press TV. And the same reason Iran, and I'm winding up, the same reason Iran just ignored me for weeks till I had to threaten them to do a conference on the Israeli high technology sector. It's the same reason no one wants to talk about it, because Russia and Iran are benefiting directly from the technology transfer. That's why they don't want to talk about it. And people just, when I do the video and I'm winding up, sorry, it needed to be said, this is my therapy. Why do you leave a comfortable luxury apartment near the ski fields of Iran to a windowless hotel room in Kuala Lumpur? Something's got to be wrong with $300 in your pocket. And I've yet to make that video, but I just want to say, I would like to start ripping apart. People say you shouldn't do it, but I think it's time, because these people, we're at war. It's a dangerous time. People need to start being pulled up. And well, it's my opinion. It may not be yours, but these people are doing very well and they're making a living, and I've had enough of them, and I've had enough of people going along with their gut. It's self-evident garbage. That's all I have to say. Sorry, I'm finished.
Well, Jeremy, I think you and I, we do some of that. I mean, you know, with some of these outlets that we find problems with, and I think obviously it, you know, a lot of people don't like it, but I think we started to do that, and I don't think we're hesitant to call out or to like really lay out some criticism of someone who we find where the facts don't seem to add up with them. So I
just want to say I'm reacting to them saying, "What are you doing?" They approached me. I didn't approach them. Sure. And Ken O'Keefe now is a full-blown white supremacist, white nationalist now. He's hanging with Trevor and the gang. Oh, absolutely. He's right in that scene now. Right in that scene. Hitler was right. He loves it. He can't get it.
He used to consider, you know, Howard Zinn is one of his heroes. I'm surprised he took that kind of lead.
I mean, he doesn't talk in publicly in that way in terms of his videos. No. But here's my sense in terms of what you said, Brendan. It's clear that the idea of money, that is, okay, you think about carrot and stick as the sort of deep concepts of how do you discipline people, how do you manipulate them, how do you compromise them. And it's whatever kind of human being we all are, we all have our own fears, desires, hopes, dreams, you know, emotional issues, these types of things. And yes, some people are, you know, paid agents where you could actually potentially find an actual money trail that connects them directly. Other people are assets in a certain way. We're all assets, some of us unknowing in certain ways of different ideologies or different strains of thought that we don't understand the ways that we might be stuck in them. And so that's one thing. The stick is you know, the idea of the threat of against life, that type of thing, is very, very powerful. Very few people actually have the commitment, the courage.
Threat of ostracization also. Threat of ostracization too.
That's where I'm getting to ultimately, yes. Because in a certain way, money follows attention, right? Especially in the day and age of YouTube and Patreon and that you know, I mean, most people who are in the alternative media are not on salary. They're scrapping their donations, most of them, from viewership and these types of things. And this is clearly one aspect of the way that people's mentality can easily be controlled in terms of difficult, uncomfortable truths. But what Greg mentioned, I think, is even deeper in a way. And I think we should contend with that, that if you think about what human beings are, if you go back to us in our Paleolithic days, as you know, the you know, creature that, other than our opposable thumb and our powerful frontal cortex and our abilities to commune with higher powers in many ways, we're really the weak animal in the landscape. And so if you imagine the human family around the fire in the midst of winter in the northern climates, the most scary thing that could happen would be ostracization. And you, Brendan, are very familiar with the ostracization in many ways, and being, you know, pushed to the side, marginalized, caged. These are very powerful things, and very few people have the moral courage and foundation to be able to overcome those things and the threat of those things. So that's one thing. And I don't know how that all plays in relationship to all these assorted characters that you've had contact with and who populate the alternative media landscape. It's definitely a circus. So in getting back to your original question, which I think is the key point here, is what do we do? In many ways, I do think that, like, sort of like taking people on in a personal fashion is probably can be counterproductive. But what that means is difficult, because I think it's very, very authentic and credible and justified to take people on about why they won't talk about certain things. Hey, what's up? How you doing, William?
This is gonna happen to me.
That's Brendan. That's Joseph.
What's up, buddy?
Brendan, he's in Malaysia. That's Joseph. He's in Tennessee. And then you know Greg. Greg's in Iowa, though.
I know Greg.
Yeah, you know Greg.
Hi, William.
We're having a conversation about
it's William
lots
Wallace.
of different things.
William Wallace.
What's your?
I just wanted to ask you if you won the gummy.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate
Welcome.
that. We'll be done in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Bye.
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 Bye. I thought it was a midget assassin. They're going to get him.
William is going to be an
the
assassin on the mic, right? William's rough on the mic, dude. Don't mess with the boy. So I think that the philosopher's stone here, the coherent vision must be a concept that people can understand, the truth as a concept. And so this is why the idea of global Talpiot, I think, is so important in a way, and to lay it out so people can begin to re-understand what's going on. Wim.
He could be a reporter. He could take on Mr. Hogg.
So I do think that the main thing here is to figure out how to put forth the understanding that you've come to, Brendan, that we're beginning to come to as a crew, and put it forth in a way that helps us all understand in a way that's so compelling that it can't be denied. And so this is going to include rethinking this whole relationship between the U.S. and Israel and the Soviet Union. And I think and thinking about it with a Rothschild leverage point in the city of London as the sort of hidden hand in many ways.
Oh, is that an Illuminati sign you just did?
It's a gummy. He said, "Is that an Illuminati sign that you were?"
To me, Brendan and Jeremy, Greg, it comes down to, like, you know, painting that simple picture. Which, Brendan, I know it's frustrating because you've been trying to do that for quite some time, even with these, you know, well-produced videos. What's interesting to me is, like, this whole time I'm thinking the same thing you are. I'm reading that Guardian article. It says, you know, here's the quote from it: "For many years, the joke was that Israel had become the 51st state of the U.S. Instead, we have just become another Soviet republic. It's quite a twist in the story." And then, like, Jeremy just mentioned, like, in that recent another Guardian article that actually got taken down, all these, you know, Russian Jewish oligarchs running around London, you know, and talking about it and like their lavish lifestyles, and you know, basically they're just having a free for all in London, you know. But yet we had that situation with the Russian spy, the duel or whatever, that was killed supposedly by Russia in the UK, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. So you start
never do that.
Well, you just start. Well, yeah, no, that's one. But you start to wonder. It's like who, you know, how much power does Russia really have over Israel? And then we know how much power Israel has over us, or the United States, obviously. So it makes for this interesting dynamic. And then when you take into account all this alt media that is so weak on Russia, and you know, these Duginists and all that. It really does make you wonder, you know, about this, you know, the Anatoly Golitsyn's New Lies for Old.
Well, all we have to do is ask the question. I ask the question. You've got 1 million hardcore Russians, most of whom don't even identify as Jewish. They are Russian nationalists. If you know Russians, man, I'm a Russian. I mean, I know a lot of Russians, man, and a lot of Slavs, Serbs. I've spent a lot of time with them, Poles. I'm just telling you, what is the implications of 1 million of them moving into the highest positions of and status within Israeli society? All right, because the Ethiopian Falasha Jews are not running the Intel factory.
They're not in charge of Google and Facebook and
no.
Yeah. So this is so this also this idea of the DARPA 2.0, I think is very important too, because thinking through DARPA 1.0 and the internet's first version is clearly US centric. And so what you were laying out before, Brendan, in terms of this shift to the manufacturing that then combines with its law in the US to support this type of shift, is key to understanding that the next generation of DARPA is a global operation, and it's very likely that Silicon Valley is not in the driver's seat. They might think they are, they might be maintained in thinking that they are, but really they're, especially in terms of this pivot to Russia, and then we should also, you know, bring in other relationships there, and going back to the relationship to, you know, Jewish networks to China, is very, very important in terms of understanding this fulcrum shift to the east from the west in terms of global Talpiot as DARPA 2.0, and that yes, the rise of AI, the rise of Internet of Things, the rise of pervasive distributed databases and computation is there is a significant power structure that wants it to be not only operating out of Tel Aviv, but headed, or maybe the suburbs, Herzliya, but then hooked up with this this religious supremacist concept that operates out of a potential temple in Jerusalem. And so that combination really is, I think, the one that needs to be understood. And then trying to iron out what this Russia relationship is, who's in the driver's seat, and trying to understand this post-Soviet Union Russian relationship with the deep Israeli tech sector, I think, is key.
Jeremy,
that's a difficult job.
Before you start, Brendan, I want to say this, like, you know, one thing, DARPA, is that a relationship, is that something was that something with Google, or is that strictly the state, like U.S. government?
That's U.S. government all the way back.
Okay,
yeah, Defense Advanced Research Project.
Google is the U.S. government. Google is NASA.
Who started
Google?
NASA. You know, one of them was a Russian Jew, by the way.
Yes.
I don't know if both of them were. I know they were both Jewish, but one of them was Russian.
Larry Page.
Yeah, Sergey something.
Sergey Brin. He was born in Moscow. He's a Jewish guy born in Moscow with an engineer dad.
But let me paint another little scenario that goes through my head, and this has to do, and this is something that Dante, you've brought him up, Jeremy, No Race 8 on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
So you know, his big thing, and again, this is just speculation. I don't know. But we know with the Third Temple, that's what the Jews, like, or the devout, you know, Orthodox Jews want to, you know, bring about their Messiah after they build the Third Temple, and that's been the goal since the last one fell. And so I even did an interview with Kevin Aderson, just a friend, about kind of these cycles of building up and tearing down, and even you can see this in art history, where something's built up, an empire, and then it's torn down and then built back up again. So let me put this out there. You know, the concept of the third Rome in Moscow. You know, that's something that's actually pretty well known over in Russia. It's interesting because Brendan, we kind of exchanged some things about this, or maybe we discussed before when I started recording. But so you've got that aspect of it, and that's the Orthodox Christian Church there, the Eastern Orthodox Church. But so, if they build this temple in Jerusalem in Israel, and their AI, Messiah, quantum computer, whatever it is, eventually, I think that maybe this is just total pie in the sky speculation. But could it be that they know that the end goal is going to be or the end result is going to be that temple's going to get torn down again? And is the backup or something like that Moscow? And I'm posing this to you, Brendan, because you mentioned something about
No, it's the world. It's the world.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No. Go. I'm just throwing it out there. It could be, because I still think, about Israel's central location, Jerusalem being the center for where the East meets the West, and how geographically important that is with trade. But it is interesting when you start hearing these things about, the third Rome and the Christian Orthodox Church. Can you talk about that a little bit? You seem to know more about it.
Oh yeah, that's a prophecy within the church. The specific Russian Orthodox Christian Church is a prophecy that they will lead Christianity to the bright new shining destiny and form an alliance with Islam. That is a prophecy within the church, but I don't buy that because number one, be very careful of prophecies, new prophecies. And when you talk about Moscow as a backup, no, Australia is the backup. No self-respecting Jew wants to go to cold Moscow, please. Spare me. They might go to Königsberg or somewhere like that. They want to come to Australia. That's the hangout, I assure you. Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania is the new Zion. I have it from the mouths of people who know. And they love America. I mean, do you want to leave America to go to Russia? Come on, man. But the point is, it's the planet, and at the end of the day, we're all going to be the ultimate aim for me. I extrapolate down from smart cities, total control, a humane death, childless, vaccinated, with a robot, golem, rabbinic robot. That's the end game. Then they got to put
rabbinic robot,
a rabbinic robot, a golem.
It's a golem. Yeah, you're right. It's the ultimate technical expression in that article that you sent out, Joseph, of tech un olam, and this idea of the golem. You're right. You're right, Brendan. That is the ultimate expression of the golem. Was sort of like the conjuring into flesh. And this is interesting because isn't this? I don't know as much as you, Brendan, about like Lurianic Kabbalism and that whole thing. But they talk, I think, about the idea of broken vessels of light, and that in a certain way the vessel has to be reconstructed, and that's what they see as tikkun olam. So there's actually a materialistic edge implied by that interpretation of tikkun olam that seems to be the logical end of that is some type of technical golem.
Oh, absolutely. So for me, it's not a mystery to me. It's smart cities. Everyone's going in. Asia particularly, they want to get the Asian population under control, local population control, and smart cities is the key. And the fact that, please someone tell Max Egan, the fact that Israel is leading the way on this is obviously quite worrisome. It's not something to just say, well, they'll go down to it. We're all going in there. The camps were full of Jews as well in Russia. The only difference was they didn't tend to go in for belief of a supernatural God. If you were a Christian with an icon of Christ or Mary, you got a tenner. But it was just as full with Jews. People need to realize that. All right, the camps were all going into the smart city gulag. That is the plan with your vaccinations. And when the robots come, we're in trouble. So I believe they will fail. I have absolutely no doubt they'll fail, but we all have to do our bit. That's why we're talking. And I guess rounding it back, and I'll let others speak, is that legislation which shocked me was how in concrete that relationship, we're talking about Talpiot high technology, but it's actually in law. And that's what completely freaked me out when I read that bit of legislation. I thank Diane again for pointing it my way. And the devil's in the detail, and it's very boring. There's no lizards in there, although you can put them in there if you want. There's no Planet X. There's no polar reversal. There's no flat earth theory. It's just boring. I don't consider it boring, but there's the legislation. And this is another piece of the puzzle. And hopefully one day we'll be able to get that into a coherent picture, combining website, audio, visual material, music, maybe even popular culture, Jalil, and get it out there into the streets, whether it's in graffiti. I know, of course, I'm not encouraging the defacing of public buildings, but if you were to do graffiti, you should do something like the Talpiot program. Israel's going to, I don't know, put whatever you want in. But not that I encourage that. And there's 1,000,001 ways. And just I'm going to shut up completely. I know you guys have got to go.
Well, can we go an extra 10, 15 minutes here? Are you guys okay with that? Because it looks like things are okay over here. So
I got forever. But one of the things I have to do is lead by example. And it's now, you'd think I'm in the perfect place. Now, I have met some Islamic students from the big college here. That's really good. Hopefully something comes of it. But I'm in a difficult situation. I'd like to lead by example, but they're in an election cycle. It's really polarized here and vicious. It's every bit as vicious as what's going on in America. I have to tread very carefully. There's new laws about fake news. It's a 10-year prison term. I don't believe it's necessarily bad. It's Prime Minister Najib Razak trying to keep the country together. They're under attack. Israel has named Malaysia by name as the only Asian nation that is refusing to cooperate. I don't know how long they can last. But there's also China to consider, and the relationship between Israel and China is like that. And unfortunately, China is throwing around $1 trillion, and China is keeping the Malaysian economy alive. If I go after Israel on the streets and inform the majority Sunni Muslim population of Malaysia, I could be in deep trouble. I've had words with people in the military here. Very nice. It wasn't a threat. They just said Israel would think 5 times before doing anything to you. China wouldn't give a second thought. Just go, you're coming between us and a temple shekel. Excuse me. I'll be run over on the street. Now, I'm probably simplifying things a lot. China's not all bad as everyone makes out. I have major problems with some of their stuff, but China is the sun in Asia. Everything revolves around China and its economic power, and this is why it's very difficult for me to get out on the street. I have to tread very, very carefully. I'm on a tourist visa. I'm not on a political activist visa, but I would definitely like to get out there, and I am focusing on personal relationships because they're messing so much with my online experience. I want to thank the people for messing with me. You're now forcing me to go out and meet and greet local Malays, and I thank you for that.
Can you talk a little bit about, Brendan, about why you think the sort of area of out in the public and flesh and blood and sort of the old school grassroots activism of person-to-person contact is important in the day and age of the internet?
Oh, it's key. Look, I do understand why it's difficult for a lot of people. For me, I'm a people person. I know all you guys are people. If we could get together, we'd be on those streets having a ball. It can be fun. I consider confronting people and being abused with my 15 cameras, recording it all, to be an absolute hoot. That I'd consider that my holiday and carnival ride. For others, it's not so much. But the fact that we have lost the ability to even consider writing a letter, when I know for a fact you don't understand, for the average person out there, how important letters are. Just because you don't get the answer you want, I assure you. And you ask Jewish activists, man, they know. They know. That's why they have huge letter writing and ringing in campaigns for their local members of parliament and Congress and senators, because it works. And unfortunately, we couldn't, in the Australian colloquial term, organise a root in a brothel or a piss up in a brewery. When we have everything is there for us, we could easily win this, but no one can get together ever. And part of it is the internet. We've become so accustomed to it. It's so easy. It gives us a sense of power. If you're in the gulag, I assure you, in jail, there is no internet. You won't have a Facebook account. So you might want to start forming close personal relationships with people, and it takes effort. It takes effort to learn how to write a decent letter. There's an art to a good letter. It takes effort to do all those other things, make up a flyer. It takes effort to get out on the street. It takes effort. Yeah, I'm busy. I have a mortgage to pay, Brendan. I have 3 kids. You don't have any. You don't know what it's like. Well, die then. Die. Get vaccinated and die. Let your children 2 generations from now just die into oblivion. You better make time. You had better damn well make time, because within 10 years, you're not going to have the opportunity to speak to nobody. You're going to be facial iris scanned to get on your hardware approved, government approved laptop, phone, whatever. And you better watch what you say. So if you want your bank accounts to work, if you want the self-driving car to work, if you want to do anything, you better start waking up. And the sooner the internet goes, as far as I'm concerned, the better, because it's going to force people. It's sowed the seeds. The seeds have been sown. We've got keg rigs. We've got stuff backed up onto disc. We've got stuff on DVDs and stuff. It's done its job. We can move on now. But they'll never take down the internet because it's too valuable.
It's too good a tool for surveillance and mind control.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, come on. Show me some of that Alex Jones.
I need your help, Brendan. I need your help, Greg.
I got these documents.
Brendan, you're doing a very good job of catching a lot of these really noteworthy clips from of Alex and Steve Pieczenik and the whole gang. I think you've caught on to some. Who is this? You've identified this Ted Mallock as basically being an agent, and they're freaking out about him. What is? I don't really know anything about Ted Mallock. What is so significant about him? What role do you think he's actually playing?
Sorry, I'm not a full bottle on Ted Mallock either. I just know it's linked in with the Bronfmans. It's linked in with sex scandal, and above all, my favourite man, Roger Stone, is having a fit. I study these people because it's important. Yes, it is a circus carnival sideshow, but Alex Jones and his crew are the propaganda outlets. I mean, I have time to watch, so I download and listen on my 3-hour walk. But that whole thing involving the Bronfmans, there's a giant sex scandal brewing, and it's involving Alex Jones. There's rumors he's with a tranny.
Oh, God.
His wife is definitely a prostitute, without question. Alex only hangs with prostitutes. Most of the women reporters are prostitutes on this show. I mean, Alex is from the ground up handled by probably Dr. Steve Pieczenik. I don't know if he was entirely evil to begin with. I don't necessarily believe that. But without question, there is an emerging scandal with the Ted. Oh, sorry, I don't like. Every time I think Ted Mallock, I think Roger Stone.
Yeah, but this NDX VIM, this cult, this sex cult that is now the leader of it has been arrested. I think you're right. I think you notice some nervousness in Roger Stone. He sort of lost his top hat arrogance since the way they were drinking champagne on the day of the election. Because the Bronfman, this is $150 million of the Bronfman heiresses that were poured into this, and this is a lot of people are involved, and you know the Zero Hedges are highlighting the Clinton Foundation. They're clearly a key piece of this. The Sharon Salzman, I think her name is. She's the co-founder of it. There's multiple people who are on the Clinton Foundation and parts of their campaign. But this, I think, this is part of a much larger sex honeypot blackmail operation that even John Bolton apparently is part of in terms of the revelations around Plato's cave. In the 70s in New York City, started by pornographer Al Goldstein, and there was announcements when people would go to that club and the accusations by Larry Flint against Bolton are that he was basically forcing his wife to get gangbanged at this Plato's retreat club, and the advertisements are. Don't worry. His walrus warmonger mustache was left pristine. But then there was advertisements that said you could sign up to have your sex act videotaped. So then, to my mind, that reminds me of the relationship of one Les Wexner, a mega billionaire Israeli partisan Les Wexner, and Michael Steinhardt, who people should go look up, who were basically the ones who helped give Epstein his New York townhouse apartment with the cameras pre-installed. And then Plato's cave was then shut down in New York City, and then coincidentally opened back up in Florida at the almost the exact same time that Donald Trump bought Mar-a-Lago and had his teenage daughter sit on his lap as many times as he could.
Wow. Oh, with the parrot, with the mating parrots, that famous photo. Look, sorry, I can't get past John Bolton in a sex orgy.
No, don't worry. He was shopping his wife out. Meanwhile, he was allegedly outside on the sidewalk propositioning a 16-year-old girl for sex.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Okay, there you go.
You know, it's
it's huge.
I mean, I know the alt media is compromised and everything, but it still amazes me just how effectively these people have been able to only pin these type of real, like, immoral, degenerate sexual criminality on just Clinton and just the deep state that is opposed to Trump, when clearly it seems in a lot of cases the people who are closest connected to Trump may even be more complicit in these type of criminal behavior. But it still amazes me sometimes just how effective this narrative's been, that it's only the anti-Trump people and the Clintons who are guilty of this stuff.
No, Donald Trump and John Bolton are incredibly valid to sell to evangelical Christians in the United States of America, because they're not into boys, and then they're only into teenage girls apparently. Not children. So they're not as bad.
That reminds me, somebody was justifying Roger Stone in some of his activities by saying, "Well, I think they were all consenting adults."
Well, apparently.
No, that was Milo. That was
Well, actually, John's done some good stuff on them all. Cernovich, the whole little gang, gang of them, all parading as Christians.
Yeah.
It's
It turns out that Dershowitz is the key element here. Again, Dershowitz was apparently Al Goldstein's lawyer, just as he was an legal advocate for Jeffrey Epstein, and he's the good liberal Jew from Harvard Law School who's also on Donald Trump's side and makes incoherent legal arguments on mainstream media.
Isn't it infuriating to see Cernovich go crazy about pedos and all this and that, with him running cover for Epstein and Dershowitz and all that crap, and he's just going crazy about the pedos, and it's just...
Well, there's a saying in the jail that, the dogs, informants, dogs. The one who runs around saying it the most is
yes, that's like with the evangelical leaders who get outed as being gay. They're the ones who make the most noise about how immoral it is.
Yeah, it's a generalization, but it's often true. But look, I have to laugh. It's serious issues. People are dying. People are suffering. Horrendous things are happening. But I only remain sane in this historical period. In 1,000 years, there will be books this thick, or whatever quantum device they use to store information. There will be books written. This is a carnival sideshow. It's so utterly ridiculous, the whole thing. And gentlemen, with the tip of the spear, and I just wish we had some tangerine and bone broth to sell. I am open to selling out. Please put my bank account details up, 2.8 million, and I'm done. I would too.
We need some super male vitality.
Yeah. Hey man, I need some of that too. But look, the sex scandals are coming. Watch out. Just here's simple logic. I ask people, think for yourself. Right now, Kelly Jones, or whatever her last name is, the ex-wife of Alex Jones, is screaming about what a nut he is. He traumatized us. Okay, now Alex Jones is a key component of the Trump. You can just think for yourself. Here's a narrative to think of, everyone. She's obviously open for a book, isn't everyone out for Alex Jones as much as they're out for Donald Trump? So where's the book from his ex-wife? Where's the book deal? She's got the goods on him. Hardcore. Good. She's the one that said they're all prostitutes. He's screwing every prostitute inside off his head on meth and alcohol at Motley Crue concerts doing coke.
Wow.
All right, he's hanging with Charlie Sheen. He's hanging with former Boeing engineers who are also now Hollywood producers shooting guns.
You might even be able to throw Joe Rogan and his whole clique into that.
Oh, throw Joe, we're shooting guns, drinking beers, barbecue, hey, in the middle of a divorce.
Alex is really trying to portray himself as a family man on his recent shows, talk about how much time he's been spending with his daughters and all this. So he's really trying to push that narrative of him as the great family man who just loves his children so much and all that. And maybe he does love his children, but he's really laying that hard on his viewers at this point.
It looks like, Greg, we lost both Brendan and Jeremy.
Really? I can see me.
I see Jeremy. I don't see Brendan.
No, Brendan looks like he got...
I see all of us.
Oh, no, it's just Brendan's face is frozen on here. There he is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Brendan, your face is frozen.
I love that it's Will Smith.
Yeah, what's up with that? now it's him again. He keeps going alternating between Brendan and the Fresh Prince. So
Well, I guess I better wrap up.
Yeah, I know. It's a good stopping point. I hate that Brendan got cut off. I do love that he's got this face, right here, like ready to say something. But yeah, let's end it here. And then we'll do it, hopefully another one maybe next week if you guys can. And I'll post this probably sometime tomorrow, and I'll definitely link to some resources too that we discussed, especially that bill, just basically Talpiot in law, which is just crazy. But I will post to that, and I'll post the nuggets from it that Brendan sent in the email that are really worth people's time to at least read over. And again, I've got a ton of other resources on Talpiot, including your talk. There he is. There he is. Will Smith, he's back. Brendan, you look different. Anyway, I'll post this and I'll send the links, and I really appreciate it. This has been fun yet again, guys. I hate that we lost him, but I'll post and send to y'all as soon as I can.
Yeah, please do. And
did you want to leave
Jeremy
with anything?
What's that?
Did you want to leave with anything before we go?
Oh no, I was going to ask Jeremy to rap the Fresh Prince theme, but I won't do that.
Hey, hold up. Y'all can't hear this, but I think it's. Hold on, I gotta turn it down. This is low budge. This is low budge Talpiot talk right here.
By the way, I'll say one thing real quick,
y'all can't hear that,
Joseph.
but...
You just sent a new article about Eric Prince and this meeting he had with this Russian. I think Eric Prince is shaping up to be a very, very key figure in all of this.
John was saying that. I agree. Yes.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and in that article, it does mention Putin's judo. What was he? Judo instructor is close. Is mentioned at the end of that article, Arkady Rotenberg. So clearly, Eric Prince is somebody who was heavily connected with the very likely Giuliani and perhaps his Israeli loyal buddies in the FBI with the whole leaking of the Wiener laptop and the reopening of the investigation in the days prior to the election. From there, he goes and meets with Putin's close associate in the Pacific, one of these islands, and he also had a business dealings going on with Netanyahu. Was it his disgraced chief of staff? It was, right?
I think so.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
So
Prince is a very indicted chief of staff. Yeah.
I think Prince is a very, very key figure here. So.
And is that Financial Times article, or is that a different one, Greg?
Oh, the one about Prince and Netanyahu, I think, came out of Haaretz.
Okay. I sent one today from the Financial Times. It was behind a paywall, but I was able to read some of it regarding Eric Prince and. Oh, I forgot which relationship, but I'll post a link to that and the Haaretz article too. And his sister too is the head of the education department.
Yeah, Betsy DeVos. And by the way, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but the ultra orthodox Chabad connected movement is very, very supportive of Betsy DeVos because the belief is that Betsy DeVos will be able to implement some of their goals as far as education goes, as far as Orthodox Jews and education goes. So I don't know if that's really significant or not, but that whole family, though, is CNP, Dominionist right-wing royalty. So
so Eric Prince has all kinds of ties to China too.
The Frontier Group.
And Russia, and obviously Putin too. I think that's what the article was talking about. But Greg, send me a link to that Haaretz article. I'll definitely post that below, and definitely needs more investigation. And I do want to mention that we have a site, Talpiot Talk, that we need to get a little more secure. I think Brendan is like, I don't think you have to worry as much about Israel hacking the site and bringing it out. It could be just some 12-year-old, Jewish kid at a yeshiva school that just, got a little bit of hacking skills and just wants to take us down. I was like, good point, man. Good point. Like, that could happen. But again, that's not my specialty, but it is talpiottalk.com. Just trying to do these talks regularly, in addition to you guys doing the Antidote podcast, which, obviously I'm a huge fan. So we'll talk more about all this. I know, we got to hit the hay, but I really appreciate your time, guys, and I hate that Brendan got cut off.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for bringing this all together and always working on this with the ideas and the articles and getting this all together. And I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
And blessings to Brendan out there too in the other hemisphere. And
Indeed.
until next week, I guess, huh?
Yeah, a happy Easter, guys, and
Yeah, happy Easter.
All right, talk to y'all soon.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.